Today, we are super excited because this is actually one of the first episodes that we're doing with a founder. So it's one of the first founder series that we're going to continue with. And we wanted to do this with a Swedish founder. So this is actually, you started your brand in 2017. We've been following you ever since the start, and you are also a major personality in the Swedish sports world. But I'm not going to say more. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us what you do and who you are briefly.
I just want to mention something about it, because you said we've been following you since the start of this brand, but I've been following you since my teenage years, because you are one of the all-time biggest track athletes in Sweden when it comes to 100 meters, sprint, and long jump. So if you're Swedish, you will know who Peter is. If you're listening somewhere else, you should know that this is someone that comes from a really top-level athletic background.
The real deal, especially when we're going to talk about athletic and sports products. Yes. Go ahead,
yes,
Peter.
Thank you. I think you made the introduction for me, but I'll do my best. My name is Peter Häggström Lindecrantz, and I'm the founder of YMR Track Club. I say YMR. You can say YMR. I think a lot of people do, and I get the question, what is YMR? What does it stand for? Is it like young muscle runners, or what is it? But it's actually coming from from Ymer, which was the kind of in the Nordic mythology, it's the giant and the athlete that carries the world on its shoulders. So that's where the name come from. I'm also the CEO, sitting here in Stockholm. That's me. And I used to do long jump, especially like you said, and also some sprints. So I have a background in track and field.
And what inspired you to start your brand in 2017? How come it exists?
Well, it started actually with the track club I used to compete for. I competed for a track club called YMR, which is a sports club. And in 2017, they had their 100th anniversary. And the club, and I'm also from the textile district of Sweden, which is called Sjuhärad. And as they turned 100 years old, I thought that I was going to do something fun for the anniversary. And I always kept their old tracksuit from the 70s, which I still like and I still wear sometimes. I still think it's really cool. So I thought that, well, let's do the tracksuit a little bit updated with a slightly new design as a fun thing for the anniversary. What I realized, being back in Borås at that time, which is the city in the textile district, was that there are still some local producers, manufacturers around. So I thought that, well, let's try to do as locally as possible, because this was just a few pieces for the anniversary. When I got the first sample, I was like, oh, this was actually pretty good. So I got a little bit inspired. So I designed another piece, and all of a sudden I was sitting there with a small collection, and I started this brand. So that's how it started.
Are any of those pieces still in the collection?
Yes, it is. It's called the Street Track jacket and the Street Track pants, which is actually our best seller still. So I did some small changes, but I think this, with the kind of history with both the club, it's been around for many years, and I think it's been one of the biggest run clubs in Sweden back in the years. So with the history and the textile district and everything, I think it was a nice blend, I guess. But to be honest, I mean, in the beginning, I didn't have much of a business plan. I would just thought that, well, I set up a textile shop and see what happens, basically. And the local magazine wrote a small article, but then just a few months later, the Vogue called me from New York. So they made a spread of it, and I was like, oh, it's actually something with this brand that I guess people find interesting.
I guess I'm in business. Let's run with it.
But I mean, from creating this first this anniversary collection, how did you get your first customers? Were they all from Borås, from this area, or you started
From the
selling
club?
online? Did you see where did they come from? The first ones. How did they sell it? Did they?
It was basically friends and family, to be honest, in the beginning.
Yeah.
So that's how
But
it
those are great.
starts, I guess.
You need those.
Yeah, you need those customers as well. But then it kind of grew, I think. But in 2017, I think I had a very naive mindset that this would be easy. And I mean, this is a very competitive business. But at the same time, we're trying to do something quite different from the beginning. With the design, but also with the local production, which is still around actually. And I think a lot of people coming from that area have some kind of connection to the textile industry. We have the textile university also in down there. But my grandfather, he had a shirt factory back in the days. So a lot of people coming from that area have some kind of connection to the textile district. I think that's something that's been a very big part of me and the brand, that if we can do things as local as possible, I think let's try to do that. It doesn't always work, but most of the times we can do a lot locally, which is a big part of the brand.
I'm thinking it sounds like it was an easy start, but it's never easy, no matter how smooth things can be. But did you have any challenges when you realized, okay, Vogue just called me. I guess we're in business. What now? Like, what were you thinking? How did you go about?
Yeah, I think I get a lot of questions on that, and I guess the sales boosted a little bit, but I think the big thing with that was the confidence that okay, we're doing something that is different from a lot of other brands. There is some kind of interest around this. So I think it was very much a mindset, and it's still a mindset that we can do this. And I think it is tough in the start. It's still tough, but you keep going, basically.
But you said you were the one designing the first styles. Do you have any background in design? Do you have any education or interest, or how did you start out there? Was this the first time you designed anything?
Yeah, I've always had a big, sports fashion interest. So, I've been competing around the globe. I've been on these training camps, and I kind of had a very big collection, I would say, of pieces from, 2 decades at home.
I can imagine.
Pieces that I liked, and I swapped, and the Swedish team always had the ugliest national team outfit. It was like this, in Swedish you say kycklinggult, which is like this ugly yellow color, I think. So I usually swap mine for the other team's outfits. So I kept all this, and I've always had a big interest in fashion, and it's been in the back of my head that would be like a dream project. And then this kind of opportunity just appeared, and I thought that, okay, maybe this is the timing for it. But I have no designer background. They're still laughing at me at the factories when they see my sketches. It's like not in the best way, maybe a few times. I've used the consultant when I felt like, okay, now I'm totally out here and I have to explain it better. So I tell her how to make the sketches and so on. So I think we managed so far, and I think it's been all right.
But I think this hustling mentality is quite a lot connected to, especially if you've been doing sports, because I'm also a former pro athlete. I've been competing in the Swedish national team of military pentathlon. So it's a
wow.
military sport, but still, like, I've been at the military Olympics. I've been at, world championships and stuff. And I know a lot of people, when you discuss with them, when you talk with people that have been doing sports on a high level, they have the hustle in them, and they always have you figure it out. If you don't figure it out, you train till you can do it. So in a way, it's this like constant, MF, I'm going to do this no matter what it takes. You've got, in Swedish, we say pannben, and you just like do it. You figure stuff out and there's no one stopping you. And it's the same with, because I don't know how many times I've been crying while practicing. But doesn't matter. You sit down, you cry for 5 minutes, then you get your ass up, and then you continue because the practice needs to get practice. So it's, and it's the same with business. You get bumps, and then you pivot, and then you try something out, and then you get someone on board that mentors you, and then all of a sudden you're doing it. So I think it's like a sports mentality, which I love. And I think even brands that love to employ former pro athletes. Is that just like Google or some corporation?
Yes,
that
I just can imagine, because I mean, an athlete is used to setting a clear goal and just do whatever it takes for them to get there, right? So for you, can you see how this has helped you with your brand, with your athletic background? Has it been any cons as well? But how has that helped you with your athletic background?
Yeah, I think the whole reason why I started doing track was I was watching the 1984 Olympics, and I remember the opening ceremony where this guy was flying in. It's a classic moment in sports history. This guy was flying in with like a magical backpack, and I had no clue what the Olympics was, but at that moment when he flew in with a backpack, I decided like, oh, this is something I need to take part of in the future. So I started doing track, and 16 years later I actually competed in the Olympics. So I have a very clear kind of idea of what it takes to be successful. It took me 16 years with ups and downs and everything, and I think that's maybe what you learn the most from sports. And I think especially track and field, which is very measurable. I mean, it could be, I've been doing long jump, and I know that 1 centimeter, the difference could be, I mean, winning or being third. So everything is measurable all the time. You measure everything in track and field, and it's I think that kind of mentality is very much in this business every day. Like, we measure a lot of things, and you need to be able to comprehend with that kind of measurement. And it's very, very much a goal-oriented environment, this as well. And I think for a lot of people, it sounds like, oh, that doesn't sound fun. But I mean, it was the same when I did sports. I mean, we had a lot of fun, but we were very much focused also on what we wanted to do. And I think that kind of mentality is important, that you have fun, but you are focused and you know where you're going. And it can take you 16 years. I think also that's a thing right now, that everything has to be really fast, and you're going to boost the numbers. And it's like, it's not in style really of building like a solid, sustainable business over time. But I think that's very much something I want to do, because I know things takes time, and if you want to do something that is sustainable, you should also not stress it out too much.
So basically what we're saying, being a sports person kind of transitions very smoothly into entrepreneurship, and the qualities that you have as a sports person are really useful in entrepreneurship. But in terms of entrepreneurship and also in sports, you always have mentors and coaches. And let's look at the entrepreneurship area now. Have you gotten any mentors, or have you just figured it out yourself? Like, any good advice you've received, or any shitty advice and you're like, oh, this sucks, I'm going to figure it out myself? Like, how's the coaching and mentorship role played in your entrepreneurship journey?
I think you kind of understand over time, and as you've been around for a while, which people you trust and you listen to, because you also need to learn what people not to listen to. Because there are a lot of, shit going on basically, and bad advices, but you kind of realize, okay, this is my core team. So I've been, first of all, we have a really good board, which I listen to a lot, and where I wouldn't say I handpicked them, but almost different, competences and background, and I can get advice from different angles, and I think I try to listen to them and my team here at the office, of course. But so you pick and choose your the people you listen to, and I mean, there have been bad advices, but there are also good advices, and you know which ones usually give you the good advices. So I think yeah, that's how it goes. And I mean, you need to listen to everyone, and sometimes you make the mistakes. And I mean, I think being a competitor, if you could say that you are, I think you need to dare to fail. If you don't dare to fail, I mean, and come back stronger after that, you will never succeed. I think you can't be in the safety zone all the time. I mean, nothing will happen if you're going to be if you just taking the safest decisions all the time.
No, and also when you don't try new things, especially for yourself, if you're constantly following what the industry is doing, you're always going to copy someone else. You're always going to be second best. But if you're trying new things, innovation, a new style, a new material, a new concept, that's you. Nobody's going to be able to copy you unless, of course, they could after a while, but you've always paved the way. So I think it's an important, we try to say this to all our customers all the time. Like, don't look at what everybody else is doing. Yeah. What's your core? What's your why? What's your vision, mission, core target customer? Where are you going? That's where you need to look, not and like what everybody else is doing. And I'm thinking, are there any misconceptions that people have about starting a brand? Or is there something that you'd be like, nah, or like, what do you think? What do you think the biggest misconceptions are?
I think people don't really understand how competitive this business is. That's maybe, that was something I was very naive within, and I think a lot of people are naive. And I mean, at the same time, it's if you think too much about it, you'll never do anything else. And I think and also, like, a lot of people think that you need to come up with some kind of super new idea around this thing, some kind of tech thing that can solve everything. And I think, yeah, that could be a good idea, but there's always the possibility to do what people have done before, but you can do it better and in a different way. So I think I think it's a lot about the attitude you have against towards things. So I think and I think also this with D2C is something that is discussed very much. We have been like 100% D2C so far, and I think there are big challenges within this all the time. So I think you always need to develop your business model, and you need to try things, and you need to, if that doesn't work, try this instead. And I think everyone, like, not everyone, but there are people that think that, okay, if you go into D2C online, everything is kind of home safe, and it's such a easy way to do business, but that's not the whole truth.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, everything when it comes to sales and marketing, that would be on your plate. Since if you go to retail, they will do the sales job for you. They have their customers and the customer base. So, I mean, in your case, when you just sell D2C, as you said, I think many people underestimate. They think they've done the products, they launched the web shop and everything, and wow. But hey, where are the customers? Yeah. So you really need to work. How have you worked on the marketing and especially marketing and sales side to get your brand out? Have you some specific avenues where you have how have you worked with just your marketing?
We've been working on everything. I would say it's. I don't think we're actually a fashion brand or a sportswear brand. We're more of a communication brand, and that's what you do almost most of the time, working with communication. And we've been doing everything. It's like everything from events to performance marketing to you name it. It's the whole range you have to do, basically. And that's maybe also the biggest challenge these days. It's like sometimes you can maybe miss the old days when you were buying like the one page of the big magazine. It was like, okay, then you have done your communication. But at the same time, it was no room for creativity. You couldn't do a lot of things on your own. You had to buy your way into marketing. Now you can do everything, but at the same time, it's extremely time consuming. You're like I've been working at Swedish television, watching their kind of news desk, how they work. It's basically the same thing for a small brand like ours, because we have to do everything that the big brands are doing, which is kind of insane. So we're doing our best and we're running really fast, and it's these new opportunities also creates extreme demands on brands like ours. So it's not easy.
Now, let's revisit that. I want to go into the startup phase a little bit, because I think the topic we just discussed is really important. So I want to kind of like unpack more things around that. But first, let's talk about the startup phase. Like when you started, what in the ideation? Of course, you had the idea for the product, you had the idea for the visual, but how did you know, and was it just like a testing? Because the visual is so distinct with the retro. How did you go about that, and what was your thinking in the ideation phase?
Yeah, kind of. I told you the story about 1984, and I think I maybe I'm stuck a little bit in that time era. But yeah, I think it was the retroness is a part of the brand. Everything is not retro, but I think it was something like a style I've always liked, and I think it's more like we're working with just a few colors also. So there was an idea on connecting sustainability to design and style. Like, okay, you can match basically the whole collection and you can grow your collection. We're saying slower fashion, faster running, which means basically that maybe we're not reinventing too much with changing the colors, with changing a few things, but you can always kind of build your own collection over time. But I think that was very obvious that we're not going to try to be any other brand. And I was very much inspired by our own history. I get a lot of questions on, what were you inspired of? But I was looking at the club's history and all the kind of vintage photos we have, and which is you can see the split shorts when the club won this Stockholm City Relay in 1950. You can see the singlet was there. Okay, we did some tweaks here and there, but I'm very much inspired by our own history. I don't look too much on other brands and what they do and so on. But I was clear on that. I will not try to be any other brands like Nike, Adidas, and so on. I mean, they have their whole their own thing. It's you can't copy them really, and so it was very important that we coming from our own history, basically, and my own history doing track and field for a long time.
So do you think it sounds like it was really intentional, but did you realize how important it would be this many years after? Because having a unique design DNA identity is very rare, and it's one of the most impactful thing a brand can have. Did you realize that in the beginning, or were you like now like, oh, this is awesome?
No, I actually, I think I've been working with communications for many years, and I think I realized quite early, not when I started the brand, but just after and I think maybe it was that Vogue article that, okay, I realized that, okay, our story and the storytelling here is very authentic. It's true. Everything, how we build the storytelling, it's actually 100% true, which is very rare. We have more than 100-year-old history, and I think maybe my background also as an athlete, it's very true. And I think that's maybe unique for a brand to have that. And that is an asset. Yeah, I can see a lot of brands trying very, very hard with their storytelling to create something. But this is a true story, and it's quite easy to also adapt the collection to our own history.
But I'm just thinking here now, we're talking about how you started the brand and how you came up with your first collection, but you also mentioned that you didn't have a business plan. So what happened in this step from when you had launched and kind of the next step? Normally a brand has a business plan in the beginning. How did you continue? Did you sit down and create a one, or you just, okay, let's continue, let's add some more styles, or let's grow the collection? What happened then? What kind of strategy did you have to continue?
Do you have a business plan now?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it took like six months maybe, because it was just a thing that I threw up in the air from the beginning, and let's see where this ends up. And I think from the beginning it was very much like a street wear brand, but me myself, I'm coming from the performance side, and that was the dream somewhere in the background. So just after 6 months, I decided, like, okay, let's do this performance wear performance brand with influences from the fashion side, and the business model was definitely evolved. But I was, in the beginning, I was doing all kinds of other things. I was working as a consultant. I was working with TV as a commentator, just to get everything going, and it was a lot of hard work in the beginning. It's a lot of hard work still, but just to get everything up and running. So I think the business model evolved over time.
In terms of the style and in terms of the design, you have a very unique way of doing things. Not very many brands use Swedish made fabrics. And not, I mean, because it's 100%, right? Like it's 100% of all your materials come from Sweden.
Yeah, now we actually are 95, I would say. We're doing like sunglasses, and we did this small collection with other fabrics because there were some fabrics we couldn't do. But it's, I would say it's 95% is Swedish made, and we also have the whole production on some products also in Sweden. So we have a few made in Sweden products also.
Which is amazing. I want you to unpack that a bit more. Why, how, the costing of it, which is, I'm sure, the margins, like unpack as much as you can. Of course, you know, our listeners are founders themselves and CEOs of apparel brands. So all the details, the more, I should say, the deeper you go, the more information and the more tangible tactics they can get. So just like the gist of okay, let's go with Swedish fabrics, where you could choose a Taiwanese fabric for €2. Just the fact they're made in Sweden when you could go in China or you could go in Vietnam. That is so fascinating, that decision, and also to stick with it. I think it's so inspiring. Yeah, unpack that.
Yeah, I think like I told you, my heritage is from that area, and I think I was sharing a lot of fabrics in the beginning, and I was like, but these Swedish made fabrics are great. So why not do as much we can locally as we actually can do these fabrics? Really performance fabrics, I mean, on a high level also. So I thought, why would I move the whole production somewhere else if I can do this locally? So I thought from the beginning, let's start this and see what we can do, and it turned out, I mean, really, really well. And I think also this was an idea of the whole. You can see in the fashion industry how, I mean, it's been fabrics and trims and everything has been traveling a few laps around the globe before it ends up at the warehouse. And we have the warehouse in the same district in Sjuhärad. So I mean, the longest our production is 520 kilometers from the production side. Now we're actually doing sunglasses in Italy, so that is I have to mention that. But otherwise, it's very close. So and we have some production, like I said, it's in the same areas. It's basically just traveling 10 kilometers from the factory to the warehouse. So I thought that's a big part of the sustainability for us, that we can reduce the shipping, because it will be shipped also from the warehouse to the customers. So if you add on everything, it's quite a lot if you produce overseas.
And also, when you manufacture locally, there's the communication, there's the development that's faster. If something happens, you're there. I'm sure they can give you a call and you can bike there if you're in the area, not in Stockholm. But you can go there really, really fast and solve problems. It's another way of operating than if you're working with someone overseas and things take months to develop and months to
we're
bring out the product
faster. And what we always do is, when we produce new stuff, we do very small volumes, because one of the biggest problems in this industry is the overproduction. So now we're producing a small quantity in the beginning and see what will happen, because honestly, in this business, it's very data driven, but it can be from one season to the other one. It's the black one that works, or suddenly it's the white product that works. So it's kind of, if we can do really small volumes in the beginning and not taking risks financially, but also sustainability wise, it's a really good thing. And the second thing I would like to mention also is that when I grew up in the district, it was a big kind of depression, because this was a production district where you produced a lot of the fashion sold in Sweden, and everything basically went away overseas. So there is some kind of idea of, I want to bring this back, because I think we need to be able to produce here. We are a country which is pretty good at digital solutions. And we're also, I mean, we think sustainability is quite high on the agenda. So I think I have some kind of idea that I want to bring this kind of industry back. And I want to see new digital solutions and taking this to the next level, so we can actually compete with these other countries that are really good at producing fashion. So I think that's that angle also, giving something back to the district.
I'm thinking just about one thing, because producing locally usually means added costs. And for a lot of brands, they are scared that it would be too expensive to manage it. How do you see this? Is it a big challenge with the cost, or can you kind of, is it advantage in other areas? You don't have to go overseas and travel. You maybe can cut down on shipping and so forth, or is it tough?
How's the equation looking? That's basically what we're wondering.
Yes, and just for brands thinking about it, if there are angles they haven't thought about producing locally, that actually you don't have to be too scared about it.
Yeah, I think the prices are higher for sure, and that's something we need to have in mind. So we have to have a higher price to the customer than maybe some other brands have. And we get that questions, oh, we think you're expensive. And I was like, sorry, we will never be cheap. Never, ever. Because that's not our business model. And we're talking about slower fashion here. The big upside is the volumes, that you can actually produce less and scale up only when there's a demand. So I think there are pros and cons to this. But it all comes down to what feels good in your stomach. I don't want to create a brand that doesn't feel right for me. And I think this is the way to go for us. Also, I mean, again, doing something different. We have a lot of customers that love what we do because of this. So we will still have a big part of our production here in Sweden. And we come from that area. It would almost be rude for us to not give something back to the textile district in that area, also on the production side. So yeah, I think and I think the whole idea is also coming from that the customer, if you buy the local brewed beer, you understand that, okay, yeah, this will be more expensive because it was produced here around the corner instead of the big gigantic factory somewhere else. which has a different price on it. So I think there is something, and I also know that we are really, really good in Sweden, especially on fabrics. So I think there is a quality angle of it.
Absolutely, because the quality materials means longer lasting products, which means more. So the most sustainable product is the one that lasts the longest. So that's it's just like a correlation to that. But I'm thinking of the speed to market because, of course, when you produce locally, you have the fabric. Everything can be done way faster. Because of course you don't have the production itself is way smaller, so meaning it's a way more agile production, both in the actual sourcing in the fabric, also in the manufacturing. So how fast can you put products to market? And also you already mentioned, which is the testing. If the product is successful, you only create a small batch and then you produce per demand, which is phenomenal. But talk to us a little bit about the actual ideation phase and product development phase, from idea to actually now it's in the warehouse. How fast can you go, and what does that look like being a locally manufactured and produced product?
Yeah, and you're pretty spot on this, because I used to do sprint, so I'm a former 100-meter runner, and this is a big part, of course. I mean, it's been insanely quick a few times. So I think we've done things that from idea to having it at the warehouse 3 to 4 weeks.
That's phenomenal.
It's incredible.
So we're very, very fast, which I love, that way of working. So I think, it doesn't always work like that. It depends on kind of the demand and so on, and the production plan and so on. But we've been extremely fast a few times.
And I'm thinking, is that now your tactic? Because you're a D2C brand. Is that one of your tactics to differentiate yourself? Have you put it into a system to be your superpower?
Yeah, I think this which is also for us the slower fashion part, and the kind of small volumes, to test more and more and being working even more sustainable in that way. That's a big part of our tactics, I would say. At the same time, we're not like, oh, the trend right now is this color or this print, or so in that sense we don't need to be really fast. But I think it's very good for our business model. So we have a business model, and not going insane on, like now, for instance, we had a fabric at the factory in merino wool tencel, which was like a fleece fabric. And so the factories, or the manufacturer were like, hey, we have this fabric. What do you think about this? It's been lying around. We need to use it because we don't burn fabrics like some brands do. And we were like, yeah, let's try to do a merino jacket. We've never done that. It's a great fabric. We love it. And I think from that idea of kind of saving this fabric till we had it out on the website, that was 3 weeks. And we had zippers around, and we can use this and we can use this instead of,
I love it.
Wasting this fabric, which is also very eco-friendly fabric. We made a jacket of it, and told our customers like, hey, we just saved this fabric. What do you think? So I think that way of working, we will do much more. And we're trying to also kind of save these fabrics that we have that are lying around like since before.
I mean, it's great in so many ways. I mean, both for speed to market, but just using products, material that's already produced. And this is a really great way of looking at it. You don't need to start producing all material again. See actually what's out there that's overproduced and you can reuse.
Do you because you mentioned the small batches, do you do pre-orders ever? Like that as a tactic?
Now we're actually going to move more into wholesale also. So then it will be pre-orders like that. But we haven't done pre-orders online yet. But I think with all these new kind of digital tools that are coming, I think we're going to look into it more and more. I think the whole on-demand thing is really interesting, and
Yeah.
I think you can see that there are a lot of good digital tools developed right now that you can use. So it's definitely interesting, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense. And also from a customer perspective, and this is my next question is going to be on the customers, because from a customer perspective, if you order something and you wait for it, you really want it. Then if you go and happen to pass by an H&M store and you're like, oh, I like that dress, it's cute, I'm buying it for $25, and you're like, forget it in your wardrobe because you haven't really, it's not really wanted, if you know what I mean. So I think sometimes it's really good to have people wait for something, because then they really want it, they kind of like long for it. It's a different connection. One of the aspects of longevity of a product is the emotional aspect. So it's the physical, and then you also, the second aspect is the emotional aspect. The more emotional aspect you have with the product, the longer you want to keep it, the longer you want to use it. So it's a really, it's from that perspective, it totally makes sense. So I'm excited for you to dive deeper into that, because I think it's going to make a lot of sense with your customers. And then on your customers, how do you work together with your customers? Do you involve them in how close is your relationship with your customers and their feedback, and you kind of like working and producing and creating products together with them? Is it something you do? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, we usually use surveys that we send out. So we have these kind of groups giving the feedback, and it's high and low. It's good feedback we get, and we try to develop the brand from it. We also have this kind of closed Facebook group, which is we're testing a lot. We have done over the years and asking, hey, what do you think about this? And we get some input. So definitely, yeah, I think we are listening to them, and it's it's you need to have the kind of relationship with the customers, and I think a lot of our customers also feel like they're almost part of a club, which is interesting. Which I was in the beginning. Why didn't they name a club? That was a strange thing. No one will understand we're a clothing brand now, but it actually turned out really well, because I think a lot of our customers feel like they're part of a community, and I've heard that a lot of people that wear our stuff during races, when you run like the Stockholm Marathon or whatever, you always say hi.
We just saw Göteborgsvarvet, and we saw a lot of Iver.
Yeah, and they usually say hi to each other. I've heard that they're like a part of a club, which
I love that.
That's fantastic.
It's amazing to hear that.
And there's a lot of brands now that have this as a strategy to create and co-build the brands together with their customers. And I think it's one of the most, how should I say, impactful thing you can do, because if you've got someone that deep in the values, in being such a fan of your product, that's the best marketing you can have. Free marketing. It's the most, again, like the strongest marketing, because word of mouth is the best marketing you could ever have. And also it's returning customers. If someone loves you, they're going to come and buy from you over and over and over again. They're going to bring their sister and their cousins and their friends and whomever. So it's a very, very good, scaling system in a way.
Absolutely.
I'm just thinking, I want to step back again, because I like the business side of everything.
Class is the left side of the brain.
So when you started, and there are costs associated with starting a brand, the production, everything, how did you go about funding everything? Could you do it yourself, or did you have to look for investors in order to make it happen?
Yeah, for many years I was funding it myself, which was very hard. I had 3 jobs at some point, and just doing all I could. And I felt like I needed to come up to some kind of platform before I looked at external funding. And
but so you never took any loans for it, for example?
No.
Wow.
I didn't. I had some help from the incubator in Borås here in Sweden.
Nice.
But Then I brought in some funding. I think it was 3 years ago. So just because I felt like, okay, we need to come up to a new level, and especially being a D2C brand, we needed a better platform, which costs money, and also scale the kind of the volumes. But it's not been a lot of funding, like so I can see some other brands have done, but it's significantly funding, so we could scale to the next level, which was a good decision, I think.
It's always hard for startups because you can, first of all, there's a lot of money to put out because you need to produce the stuff before you get the money back. If you're a D2C, it's somehow easier, not that much easier. If you're a retail, if you've got a wholesale model, it's even harder, or sometimes easier, depending again how you see it. So there's a lot of money that you need to put up, and then to get to the next phase, you need even more money. So the cash flow problem is a constant pain in the ass. How do you deal with that now? What's your cash flow strategy and tips for our listeners?
Good question. But it's I think the traditional business model also in this industry has been like big spring collection and a big fall collection, which kind of puts you really down on the cash flow side. So I think also this kind of releasing and having products coming out basically all the time, and also this again, the good thing for us is the local production, where we can maybe have smaller volumes and just scale up when we see that the demand is there. So that helps us. And I think also, even if you produce overseas, I think there's a negotiation part maybe that you can do there, because they're very used to the kind of model that, okay, you need to do 10,000 pieces of this, or it's like I don't know, but there might be some discussions you can have there, because it's really draining your business having those kind of starting volumes, I think.
Yeah, some businesses go bankrupt because they can't deal with the cash flow problem, even though they have a really good, they have an issue finding new investors, and then no investors jump on, and then all of a sudden, oops, we're out of business, even though they have really, really good sales and they have a really solid business, but it's the cash flow that messes things up.
Yeah, very much.
So in what markets do you sell today? Where do you have your most customers?
We focus on 3 markets at the moment. So it's Sweden, which is the biggest market, then it's Germany and Norway. And the good thing has been that every market that we've entered, it has worked really well. So both Norway and Germany is doing really well. The 4th biggest market is actually the US market, by far, which we're not focusing at all on. So that's interesting that that market is evolving without us doing basically anything. But we were in one store at the moment, and we're Brooklyn Running Company, which is a really cool running store, which has helped, of course, to the US sales. But I think that's been our strategy now, and we'll work from there, I guess.
So I'm just thinking of a practical thing. When you enter a new market, I mean, now you're based in Sweden. We know many of our listeners are based in the US, for example. Let's say you want to get into a new market, a new country in Europe. What do you have to think about? I mean, you have a web shop and everyone can access that. But what do you really have to think about before focusing on a new market?
A lot of things. Basically, it's one big part is the shipping, of course, how it works. So we have had some advantages because there is a decision between the European Union and some countries on EU produced products that is customs free, which we have EU produced products. So it's That could be one decision. Like, okay, so there's a agreement with Switzerland, for instance. Maybe that's a market for us, because you need to make it easy for the customer to buy. So I think that's a big part, and also like the currency fluctuation. I think you need to see where are the good markets on the currency side, and then don't spread yourself too thin. I think that's been our strategy. We have customers from all over, and it's really, we're keen on, oh, maybe we should do that market and that market, but we have this amount of money to spend. So I think you don't spread too thin, and don't be focus on one market from the beginning and do that really well, and maybe then you can add something and so on.
And then there's some administration about the VAT, for example, to keep track of where your customer is buying from, where you have your storage, and where the receiving customer is. So
to boost it, to boost this, do you also do physical events in those areas, in those countries that you enter, or is it purely digital? Like, do you combine the physical and the digital?
Yes. So actually next week we have one event here in Stockholm, and the day after we have one event in Oslo. So that's actually going to be our first event in Norway. So yes, it's going to be more and more events also outside Sweden. We're actually setting up a run club outside Sweden also. So it's a lot of things going on right now.
And it's these things that, again, tie back into the emotional aspect, because now a brand is not just about the product. A brand is even more about the things that are happening around the brand, the values, the way the brand operates, how it interacts with its customers, the events. It's all the things around that actually have nothing to do, in a way, with the actual running shorts or running top.
Yes.
That needs to be top notch to actually, for people to love it. So priority number one is to have a phenomenal product, but it's not enough, not anymore. People are more looking into brands that represent themselves. So just this customer behavior has changed drastically. From before, you could just buy whatever, it didn't actually matter. But now people buy into brands. So it could, represents their values and their kind of like lifestyles and things. So it's
it's a whole different ball game these days, and I think especially us, we're coming from the sport, so I mean, there are a lot of brands almost created by maybe players that I don't know, ad agencies or whatever. But I think for us it's really important that we understand this sport probably better than no one else. So why not show it? But it takes a lot for you to do all these kind of events and everything. But I think we're a fashion brand. We're just as much a brand where you can find all the information about your running, and if you want to do track and field or whatever. So we're talking just as much about that, actually. Exactly like you're saying, buying into the kind of knowledge this brand have. Not only the products, which are a big part, of course, but it's so much more.
I'm thinking you talked about sustainability. You talk about slow fashion. You have local production. It's less shipping. You use material that is already produced. You want to avoid overproduction. In our last episode of this podcast, we spoke to Pascal Moreau, who is an expert on sustainability and upcoming legislations. And there are a lot of new legislation coming up in EU when it comes to sustainability and traceability. What are your thoughts about this? Is this a big challenge for you, or is it easier for you since you already have this in mind about sustainability? How will this affect your business?
Two ways, I think. I mean, one thing is if you are in control and you have, few manufacturers and so on, it can be it can be quite smooth for you. And I think this is something we anyway want to do and have in our plan going forward, being very transparent where everything comes from, and we are kind of transparent around this anyway. So that is, I think the whole initiative is really good. What is tough for brands like ours and smaller brands are that it's very time consuming. It's kind of complicated also, I would say, which I'm afraid will drain all these kind of new brands coming. And I mean, the big brands have their whole sustainability department, and they can do this. It's but I think for smaller brands and startups, it will be very, very tough. And I can see that it can drain you completely. So it's both ways, I would say. I'm not too freaked out about the whole thing, because I think we can definitely handle this in the way we're working with our production, but I can see the challenges for a lot of smaller brands.
Yeah, and just understanding what you need to do and comprehend that.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And then
it's
probably you will need lawyers involved so you don't step outside of these boundaries.
Yeah,
and also communicating without greenwashing. That's another aspect that a lot of brands are not really sure on how to do. So let's talk a little bit about your marketing. How did you get your brand voice out there in the beginning when nobody knew who you were? Of course, you had the event, which made it easy, but I'm thinking when you were to actually do this properly.
Yeah, it was not one way. It's like doing a long jump like I did, and got the question, why did you jump that far that season? It was a lot of things that you do all the time. So I think there's been PR, there's been performance marketing, it's been the events. I've been doing the kind of, in the beginning I did the big races like Göteborgsvarvet, which is a huge half marathon here in Sweden. One year I did everything myself. I painted the walls, I did put up everything. I was standing there from morning till night. I mean, I think everything kind of adds up to the kind of marketing we did, and it was not one solution, I think.
What was the thing that could you say something that you was noticeably different that made a huge impact than something else? That I don't know if it was maybe you running the race, or maybe of course being in vogue, but was it one thing that you did like, okay, this gave us a lot of ROI, let's do that again, multiplied by 5? They're like, okay, this works.
Yeah, I did in the beginning, or quite early at least. I got a lot of questions on, hey, I think your apparel looks amazing, but can you actually run fast in it? I was like, yes, of course you can. But I called my very good friend and at that time Sweden's best runner, Mustafa Mohammed, Musse, called him. His nickname is quite familiar here in Sweden. So I said that, hey Musse, people keep saying this about the brand. What do you think about joining this? And he did. He joined the brand and became an ambassador. And the first thing he did was to run his fastest half marathon in 5 years, and he set the Swedish record in the marathon in the gear. So it's like, okay, we checked those boxes.
Yeah,
and I think that was kind of important, that to show everyone we're not like a fashion brand. We are a performance brand, but we kind of just did it quite differently on the fashion side. But still, it's very much a performance brand on the performance collection. So, and I think Mustafa proved everyone that you can run fast in this as well.
Since you mentioned him, let's continue on this topic, because he was actually one of the questions that I have further down the interview. But let's discuss this right now, since he's here. How much is he a part of the business? Does he have ownership in the business, or is he just as a friend?
Yeah, he's a partner of the business now. He wasn't from the beginning, but now he has invested in the company. And he was here the other day, just looking at everything we're planning for next season, trying it out. He's going to run in the new. He's testing a lot. We are as well. So the production manager is also a really good runner. So everyone is testing it. But Mustafa has a lot of good input. And I mean, both of us have been around in this business for quite some time. He took his first medal at the Swedish Championships in 1998. And now, what is it, 26 years later, he's still pretty good. So I think we've seen a lot and we tested a lot, which is it's a really good thing. And he's going to do a shakeout run before Stockholm Marathon here. So at the clubhouse here in Stockholm the day before. So he's very much involved in the business.
How much is he coming up with designs and products, or is he more checking off and testing, kind of like at the end phase, or is he saying, dude, I need you to do this for me because I want this type of product, and you're like, okay, let's make it? Because you're a user, he's a user. Sometimes users can, when they collaborate, it's like, explosion of ideas. How does that collaboration and the ideation and the creation work?
But it could be very much in the details. And I think that's, it could be like on the split shorts. Hey, I really want the split on the side to be 1 centimeter higher up. It can be on that level. It could also be, hey, I think we should do a pair of mid-tights now. I see a lot of people doing running in mid-tights now. It could be, on that level, kind of. So it's very much high and low, and he's a smart guy, and we kind of have found our way of working together. I think the last thing he said was, I think we should do a pair of socks that are slightly lower. We have our compression socks that goes up to the knee, that is very popular, that are made in Sweden. It's very much high and low. But he's a good asset to have.
Of course, because when you come from a user, and that's why we are in the sports and outdoor industry, because we're athletes ourselves. And I think if you're birthing products for sports and performance, you need to know your shit. You need to know the pains. You need to know you cannot have the seam over here because it's going to tug and it's going to chafe and it's not comfortable and it's going to hinder you from the thing that you're doing. So you need to have the understanding. That's why I think the best products are most often birthed by actual athletes. Of course, if you're the Nikes that have like hundreds of designers and hundreds of millions of dollars to put into, their product development, that's another thing. But I'm talking about smaller types of brands.
Yeah, and I think it's still this kind of 1 centimeter mentality that's the difference between success and failure. So every little detail, and I think that's something that has evolved over time. And I think, like the first collection there were a lot of things that need to be improved, and I think we're all over the years we have improved the collection insanely much on fitting, the kind of fabrics and everything. Even if I thought that I knew this well from the beginning, I think there are still things that needs to be developed, and also the running community has developed over the years. I mean, like now you run longer. I mean, the ultra marathons, for instance, have the popularity of those races have grown a lot. So then you need to add pockets here and there and everywhere. And so that's just one thing that it changes over time.
Which is good because this industry is never still. And imagine how boring it would be if it was all the same. 10 years later, we're still using the same materials. That's why it's so exciting. And that's why, because there's new materials, there's new finishings, there's new solutions, there's new needs from the customers, there's new behaviors as well. It's not just, you don't always now have the ultra runners and the super, high athletes. Now you also have Britta, 57, that runs sometimes, and she loves it. And she needs the quality that, equally as much as the ultra runner, super performance athlete. So I love the fact that the products now have equally an important role in no matter what level you are at running or in your sport. People need the the quality and the performance equally much, because everybody's in their own journey. No matter they're in pain, even if they're starter, or if they're a super athlete, their pain is equal no matter where they are. Right?
Yeah, and I think also we get a lot of questions on, hey, your garments are only for running. That's right. I was like, no. I know we had someone coming in here a few months back, and hey, you have the best tights for yoga, but you're a running brand. Isn't that weird? It's like, yeah, of course you can use them for yoga. It's but it's very much a marketing thing also, that you are in your discipline, but of course you can use the garments for several occasions.
Do you think that limits you, or do you see it as a limitation, or do you see it as a strength?
A strength, I think. A lot of brands, take Patagonia for example, they started as a climbing brand, and then you can maybe expand from there, but I mean, you need to own your own crowd first. So I think it's very important for us. So it's still in an early stage, so we need to earn our crowd and the audience before we try to do anything else. So I think that's important.
So is that tough to keep that focus? Because I guess you would like to say, hey, you can use it for this as well, and this activity, and it's great, but it's gonna be maybe too diluted message when you get out. Is that maybe it's easy to focus at this stage?
Maybe, but still the big part is probably the aesthetics. I mean, I'm coming from track and field. I love this sport all my life. I'm going to my 4th Olympics in Paris, and I think it is the most fashionable sport by far. That's what I feel, being in this sport for a long time. So the whole aesthetics is built around track and field. If you take like Stockholm Stadium, which is just around the corner from here, it's the most beautiful track stadium in the world. It's how can you not love everything around this?
It's so iconic.
Yeah, and I think the aesthetics is something that will appeal for a lot of people, even if you're not a track and field athlete or if you're a runner. So I think that's important, that we have our heritage in this sport and we can build. I mean, like our tracksuit is still a bestseller, the one I started with, and it's I mean, that's a garment. You don't really train or do track and field in the tracksuit. It's an iconic tracksuit that you wear wherever you are. So I think that's also maybe even more important going forward, that okay, we're coming from the sport and the aesthetics is around the sport, but you can wear the garments in different occasions.
Let's talk
it's
about.
Also like to just give you an example. Sorry for interrupting you, but
sure.
In Sweden we had paddle. That's been a huge sport. I don't know how many emails I got from paddle athletes. Hey, can you do paddle shorts? Can you do this? It's like, yeah, of course we could do that, but it's not me. Sorry, I mean, I'm not coming from that sport, but of course you can wear shorts to play paddle. It doesn't work like that, really. That you have to do, but it's you need to know, in order to know where you're going, you need to know where you come from, I think.
And also focus, because again, the customers, they don't have so much time to think about you as a brand. So they need to, most often they put you in their minds, in their brain with like one word. And then, so what is that word? Yesterday I did a post, or the other day on LinkedIn, on that brands tend to have too much communication, like too many concepts, too many stories. So when you pitch the collection to the retail, they're like, what the hell is this collection about? Because there's just too much stuff. And then it comes into the store and it's like 70 different messages to the end consumer. And they're like, my brain needs to be turned on. I can't take a decision, so I'm not going to buy it. Like, you need one message. What is it about?
Yeah, and it has to be authentic, I think. It's I saw this other Swedish brand launching a running collection, and they used the classic image of a person standing in the start blocks. The hands were over the line, which means you're disqualified, right? And you were not, it was and it's an example maybe that you need to be authentic. I mean, if I would go into paddle and I don't play paddle, I'm not interested in that sport, I don't think you will do it really well, and maybe then the messages will be all over. We're not worked with models in our photo shoots, for instance. We work with athletes and runners that I know they can run. Maybe I'm a little bit too much of a nerd, but I think a runner needs to run like you're supposed to run in an image, not like how a model runs. But maybe that's just me. I don't know.
No, it's not, because we're having this. We've worked with hundreds of brands and we have this conversation all the time, because we don't only do design and product develop for them. We do like the entire concept. And this is one of the topics that we discuss all the time. It needs to be credible all the way down to the model in the picture, because sometimes you have no idea how many times in fit sessions we have a person that's supposed to fit the product and they have no idea. Let's say you're fitting a ski outfit and they have no idea how to put the stupid ski boot on because they've never had a ski boot on. And you can't have that type of person in your fit sessions because they don't understand how the product is supposed to fit. They don't know where everything goes. They're just standing there and they're like, like stiff bodies without any. You can't have that. You need proper people that understand where it's supposed to go, how you tuck it in, where is the sleeve gonna, so just the movement and the entire physical aspect on top of the body. It's not just, it looks cute in a picture, but it's not for real. It's just fake. Yeah. You don't want fake because it's going to show eventually.
True.
Yeah. Let's move on. Super. I love that it's so nerdy and so detailed because it shows that it's for real and it shows the passion that you have for it and that you're still looking and fiddling with all the details, which eventually make the entire difference. Let's dive into the team. I'm really curious about what, of course, because you're a small brand and you don't have like hundreds of employees. Talk to me about your team. And I also want you to talk about the beginning, how you decided to bring people on and who and what your decision was, like who to bring on first, like your key employees and how you were thinking about that.
I was basically thinking in the beginning what is the most time-consuming thing, and what can't I do all the time? So it was within the marketing and communications. Like I said, this is very much a marketing communication thing. I used a lot of consultants in the beginning to get help with things I couldn't do, but So today we're 4 people working full time. We have one person is acting as a consultant, but is moving into full time now. We have my wingmate. He's British, Luke. He's the COO. It sounds quite ridiculous when you have titles, I think, with a small company, but he is actually like head of operations and leaning against marketing maybe a little bit more. We have a social media manager and we have a production manager, and then it's me. I've been doing everything from the beginning, but I mean, you need to move. You need more people, of course. So now it feels like we're a really big team, and we have still some consultants that we use from time to time, but and customer support we also have.
And how are you thinking now in terms of scaling your business? Because you've been running for a while. How are you thinking in terms of the team and to bring it to the next level?
Well, we just brought in also help with wholesale. So we have a person's just going to handle that on a consultancy basis. So that's a big part now that we will kind of diversify our sales in that way. So that's a big part of the strategy going forward. Also working a lot with the club, as we call it. So it's going to be a lot of events going forward. So it's we have not really decided how we're going to deal with that, but it's probably going to be within the team actually. We have a great location here in Stockholm, which is really good for doing all these events. Yes, I think doing everything a little bit more. I think we have a very solid platform now. I've not been happy with a few things like, okay, we can improve this on the collection and we can improve this, but I think right now I'm super happy where we're at and what we're doing, and I think this is gonna now we kind of want to squeeze up the volume on quite a few things. We will enter some new market. It might be the US actually, because we see that all the signs are there. But let's see. We are a European brand. We like it close to home, so it's not decided yet exactly if it's going to be that or some other market. But I think we will, or I know we will enter some new market this year, coming year.
If I want to work for you, do I have to be a runner?
No, but it's good if you are.
But it's a plus.
It's a plus because it's the target audience, but I think you can learn everything, right? So you don't have to be a runner, but I think you need maybe to have some kind of interest within running or track and field.
You will be dragged out on the track. Be sure of that.
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
I have one of my colleagues are out running right now, and she will probably come in here in a second. So there's a lot of running going on. Now it's the marathon for someone, and so on. So there's a lot of runners here.
We usually say that product development it's all about problem solving, and you usually have a lot of problems or challenges. It depends on how you see it, because it belongs to the business. And also you mentioned, I mean, you have this long time view, and I guess coming from the athletic background, setbacks, that's part of the game, and you get back and still focus on the goal. Have you had any major setbacks in your business that you could give example of, that you just this at the time looked really bad, but then you overcame it?
Yeah, I think the pandemic was good for some brands, but for us it wasn't good because the factory was the main factory that we work with was shut down for some weeks, and which made everything quite complicated. We got the winter gear when we were almost coming into the summer, and that kind of messed up the whole cycle. That was a big challenge actually. But I think also, I mean, there've been products that have been not good enough that we had to send back and do changes and all of that. But I think the pandemic was tough, and I think also like last spring when everything, or is it 2 years ago? When everything going on in Europe and the economy for people and so on, there have been some challenging years, which made me even prouder maybe that we have kind of been able to grow during this time and building a business, even though it's been quite challenging. You learn from your mistakes.
How are you in those situations? Are you just like, this is just business, or are you frustrated in those moments, or are you just so used to having this long time vision and things happens along the way, and sometimes it's up and sometimes it's down?
No, but I definitely get frustrated when those things are happening. But I still always have the kind of vision and the goal in the back of my head, and that is not what's going to happen in 2 weeks, but in maybe 5 years or so. So I think you need to go back and be creative and work with the team. And I think everyone within our team is creative and testing new things all the time. And I think that's what we've been doing and working really closely. And I think it's kind of being simple and easy and talk to each other. I think, just keep working.
Sounds like you have a good working culture with a good communication, which is not something that you can take for granted. Do you think about company culture? Do you think about it and implement it strategically, or is it something that just happens?
It just happens, I think. But I've been at a lot of different workplaces, and there have been good ones and there have been bad ones. And I think I know pretty much what kind of culture I want. It's very much based on simplicity and speed. We do a lot of things, and we are in that phase of a company that you need to do it has to be not very complicated, and trial and error, and not sitting still, and not building amazing PowerPoints. That's not what it's all about. I think it's very much based on simplicity, which I really like.
It's key, right? Just being straight with what you want when you need it, and just like no BS and no fluff and no, just straight communication is so underrated as a business tool in general. Yeah.
Definitely.
Let's keep talking about business operations. I think tools and software is something that a lot of businesses use for speed, for smoother operations. What's your go-to? What are your tools to make your business smooth as possible?
Well, the whole kind of the big platform is obviously the online business we have, and the e-com platform. So everything that makes everything, what makes it smoother and easier for the customers. That's interesting, I think. So I think
what platform do you use for your website? Do you have Shopify? Like who you using?
Yeah, we have Shopify. Yes, we have Shopify. So I think a lot of our focus has been around that, and making it easier, and looking at the kind of different apps that makes it easier for the customer. Getting the return rate down we have a very low return rate actually, but you can see that that's one KPI that is so important to get your business
Can
profitable.
I ask what that is? Because it's low is very different for different brands. Some have 23 is low, and some is like no, we're down to 5, and that's low for them. So it's what's
we
your
have 16% in return rate,
right,
which we think is a pretty good number.
That's pretty good. Yeah,
I mean, we can improve it even more. It's really good. So I think everything connected to the website. But I mean, I just took this AI course, which was super interesting, and you can look at different AI tools, even if it kind of freaks me out. It's good to see what's out there, and you can kind of if you understand it a little bit better, I think it could be valid tools. So we're looking at that as well.
What do you guys use for product development and for design? Do you work in Illustrator, or how do you create your products in the design and product development phase? What do you guys use?
Yeah, as I told you before, it's not very impressive from your side how we do that. But the consultant that helps us out from time to time works in Illustrator, I think. Or InDesign, I don't remember, but it's so I mean we need to do pack shots and
the
more
tech packs.
Yeah, tech packs. Sorry. But I'm old school, I would say, in how I work. Let's not go into detail on that. It's not very impressive.
Cool. Yeah.
No.
And in terms of making it all, of course, come together in terms of the communication, is because the story is there from the beginning. You're birthing the story, and tell us about your process for all the content and everything that you're creating, because someone needs to, of course, write all the tags, someone needs to communicate. What does that look like for you? Do you have someone else doing it, or what's the process in creating all the communication and making sure that the right, correct, authentic brand voice is communicated and reaching the end consumer?
Yeah, we've been doing not all the content ourselves, but almost. In the beginning, I took some photos and did all of that, but that's not happening anymore. But we're producing a lot of content ourselves. We were writing all the texts and product texts and everything ourselves all the time, and it's very much going back all the time to like the latest collection we dropped was the Beckarid collection, which is actually the small neighborhood where I grew up, where kind of the idea of this collection was like going back to basics, and where do you start the whole passion for running. that whole idea where it started sometime. That was in Beckaryd for me. So it was, let's call it the Beckaryd collection. And with all this kind of technical fabrics and everything, yes, that's great, but it starts with some kind of passion for the sport. I think when you wear that singlet or the shorts, it's supposed to be about passion to do this. The next longer strides more often. That's what it's all about. Running faster. It's kind of simple, but yes, I think we could use external copywriters and so on, but I think it's kind of hard because we have the whole story. Here comes the runner, my colleague. She's been running the 10K.
Nice, and this heat, I'm sure,
so I think that's we're trying to do as much in-house as possible, using of course photographers and so on. That's been, you need to be somewhere between the sport and the fashion side. So trying to create something new, and we're trying very hard to have a red thread through all our communications, which is very important.
Do you use your customers for that, like user-generated content? Do you involve your customers in your communication ever?
Yeah, sometimes, but not always. It's a combination, but it's mostly our produced content, to be honest, ourselves. But I mean, user-generated content is amazing, and it's when we feel that it's right, we can ask them, hey, can we use this? And usually it's okay for them that we use it.
And in terms of yourself, we see a lot of founders doing the content as the face of the brand. What's your take on that? Do you not want? What was your decision to not be the face or to be the face? Will you be more involved? Do you want to go into that route? Talk to us about that.
I think I haven't been. I mean, from time to time, I've been in some of the content. I know we did a photo shoot 2 years ago, and the model was sick. He didn't arrive, so then I had to step in and do the images, and which was fun, and I can do it for sure. But it's going to be maybe a little bit more. We're going to launch a podcast actually later on this year, and I'm going to be the host of that. So I think I would like to do more, and I am quite familiar working with media and so on. So I think, but it's more like a time thing that I usually feel that I don't really have time for it, but it would be fun to do maybe a little bit more.
So what more is next for you? I mean, you talked about looking at new markets, talk about the podcast. What's more for your brand? What's coming up now in the near future?
We're going to drop a new collection after the summer. That's a big thing. So we keep working as we've done, and using only Swedish fabrics for this collection. So that's a big part, and we're doing a lot of events. We're going to do 2 events next week, one here in Stockholm, one in Oslo, as I mentioned. Then we're going to do the Shake Up Run, and it's going to be we're going to launch pretty much an event platform, build our own run club. We have a run club today. We're going to do even more about it. So I think there's quite a lot on the agenda, and entering new markets, doing a little bit more wholesale. So I think we have pretty much on the agenda.
Will you also go on a new round of investment, or is it like you're going to run with what you have and build it organically?
Yeah, right now I think we're pretty much set, but you never know. I think we might want to do some kind of round if we're going to enter some bigger markets in the future, maybe. But it's not anything planned right now. We have enough funding for now. So, but you never know.
Yeah.
One thing you've done, which has been pretty cool, and we see a lot of brands do as a way to grow fast, is collaboration, because you leverage other brands, not competitive brands, but complementing brands. You leverage their own customer base. Are you planning on doing other new collabs, shoes?
Yeah, I think we've done a few collabs. We did it with one with Carhu, which is the used to be Finnish brand back in the days,
Yes.
which was really interesting. That was the first spikes I had one way back was Carhu, so it was
Yeah.
easy for me to say yes. So that was really fun. We did the Sunrun collection, where we did also an event during the pandemic, which was interesting, running under the midnight sun in from Finnish Lapland to Swedish Lapland up in the north. That was super fun. And we did a collab with Vasuma, the Swedish eyewear brand, which has been really successful. So our sunglasses called Massanella and St. Moritz are super popular. So we're very open to different collabs in the future, for sure. It would be fun. But it also takes time.
Do you see collabs as something exhausting, or something that you just like? What's your business, if you have your business hat on, because of course you see them with different eyes, but if you have your business hat on, how do you see collabs?
I think it's really fun and gives you some kind of injection into the brand also. That is, if you feel like there's a brand fit. We've said no to a lot of collabs also, but I think if it's the right brand, it works really well. Now we're also working a little bit with Samsung on their Samsung Galaxy Watch, which is really fun. But I think it could be exhausting also, because it takes a lot of time, and there's some jurisdiction you need to have in mind and so on. So I think there is not like something you always jump into, but if the brand fit is good, I think it's a nice injection.
But you take it more ad hoc, or do you have it as a strategy? Every season we need to introduce a new collaboration. What's your strategy there?
No, there is no strategy. I think then when you feel like, okay, this is an opportunity that comes up, like with the sunglasses, for example, we got some questions on it, and I'm not really keen on just kind of putting our logo on someone else's product. I want to be involved. We always have some, like with the sunglasses, for example, I've been wearing sports sunglasses forever. I was very clear on what I wanted to do, and then it doesn't really work with just putting our logo on someone else's brand. So we want to do this like you bring your expertise from your area, and we bring our expertise from our area, and if we can make a fit, if it's a good fit, we will do something that both will benefit from. So I think that's the way we want to do it, I think, if we're going to do these collabs.
I think collabs are a gateway to scalability, to bringing on new customers, growing markets, also having different perspectives and different eyes from someone being in the same sphere and niche as you, but coming and attacking what you do with completely new ideas. So it's whenever we've seen and worked on collab, it's like an innovation boost. So it's something that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, and it's been all the collabs we've had have been super fun, so if the opportunity is there, why not?
So one of the questions, which is we're trying to kind of, every entrepreneur that we're discussing with, of course, the founder, when you're a founder, you're bringing your whole soul to it. You're not just an employee. So it's because you're investing your entire soul. It's your life, because you don't have a 9 to 5. You're not at 5 o'clock, you're not quitting and saying, ciao, I'm going home. And then next Monday you're at 9 o'clock, you're on again. It doesn't work like that. So it's a passion thing, even though it's frustrating. You're crying sometimes, you're happy sometimes. It's like this berg- och dalbana, it's like upside down. But what do you love about entrepreneurship? What do you love about running this business?
Yeah, I think it's the things you love that you also hate, that it's there all the time. It's you're living this kind of passion or dream with the ups and downs, and you invested on your time, and you invested with money and so on. It's like a it's the good and bad that is like there all the time within this being an entrepreneur.
And isn't it kind of, and doesn't this kind of tie it back to, again, to sports? Because without the pain, you don't have the fun and you don't enjoy it. If it would be just a smooth ride and you would never be in pain, you'd never get hurt, you'd never pass that threshold constantly, you wouldn't see it as something fun or something exciting, or something that you look back at and say, because you always talk about the problems eventually in retrospective as something positive. And without the ups and downs, it wouldn't be as fun, right? Like the ride would be just like meaningless. It'd be like smooth, and it's not how it is.
No, and it's not like that in sports either. I know when being a long jumper, I kind of, being in the last round, you have 6 jumps as a long jumper, and standing in the last, I loved being the jumper who had the last jump, and you hate it as much. Maybe you could be, being second, and or you're being completely out of the competition, but you always were the one who had everything within your hand. Like, it's up to you how you're gonna. It can be foul, the last one. You can do some technical mistakes, or you can win the whole ship in the last jump. And I think you need to kind of love that pressure. And it's very similar to being an entrepreneur. It's very much up to you what you do with this. So I can see a lot of similarities from the sport, and I hated those moments standing there at the last jump, but I loved it as much at the same time. So it was very much love and hate all the time.
So, I mean, you talk about this long jump parallel and how it all can depend on the last jump. Has there been any time in your business where you thought that, okay, what's your boldest move you made in the business where you thought that this looks really tough right now? Okay.
On paper.
Yeah, on paper. But let's just try this thing. Have you been in that kind of situation?
Yeah, I mean, in that situation all the time. I think this with the local production, people thought I was completely insane. They were like, "Oh, you can. Why don't you just go to this? I mean, overseas." But I'm sticking with it, and it's been so many questions on this over the years, and it's like, this is important for me, and I think if I'm not going to do a few things on my own and what I think is important for me, but it's not like the people that work with me don't believe in it. It's but there's been a lot of question on it, and we said no to a few products we have not been able to do because we can't do it locally, and then we just it's a no then.
I think that's really important. Everyone has opinions, but in the end, you need to do what you believe in and what you think is the right decision to make. Because if you're just going to listen to people, it's going to be so spread out what you're going to do. So it's all about this is what I'm going to do.
But also it has to do with integrity. Integrity it's huge for us as partners and as business operators. And I think not very many brands operate on integrity. But I think eventually the customer know if you come from with an integrity base, they will trust you. And that trust is never going to go away. And again, trust is one of the things you can never buy. You can't pay for trust. You can pay for a Facebook ad to get a customer to come to you. But if they don't eventually trust you, they'll go somewhere else. So you can't buy trust unless you do things honestly, authentically, with integrity, from a place of doing something good, instead of trying to hunt cents here and there, which we see all the time in our industry.
Very true.
You started now about 7 years ago, and if you were to would give an advice to a new entrepreneur starting a brand, or if you would be able to give the same advice to you 7-8 years ago, what would that be?
Build something that is unique, even if it's a small target group. I think it's better to own that target group and not. Yeah, I think that's really important, and be into the details, not only on the garment side, but also on the communication side. There are a few things I did from the beginning that I think was quite good, and that was being content needs to be flawless. I think that's something you need to invest in, and not do this. To go be quite distinct on target group and products and communication.
I think that's key, because again, if you're also from operations perspective, because if you're starting something, if you're going wide, you don't know who you're talking to, you don't know what type of products, because your products can be for everybody. So I think that's very, very solid advice, and it would make people's lives way easier if they just like focus, narrow it down, stay in this lane, know who you're talking to, most of all. And of course, it always helps, like exactly like for you, that you are your own customer, because again, it's rooted in honesty, because you know what you want, you know why it should be the way it should be, because you're using your own product. So that's super crucial.
Yeah, that's the best thing you can do. I mean, just as you mentioned, when you're trying it out and testing it, you really know what to expect from the products and what you want from them and what's wrong and what's not wrong. You do the right movements, and if you don't know, especially when it comes to performance wear, you will not know that.
Yeah.
Let's move into tools. What are your 3 most recommended either tools, podcasts, books, or that you think would help our listeners? It can be whatever that have supported you in your journey the most.
Oh my God, that's a tough question. I think I get a lot of inspiration from all over. It's not I think still, like, looking at yourself is super important. If I would say anything, like your own history, where you're coming from, what are your interests, and I think, like, I'm super interested in vintage cars, for instance. It's nothing to do what we do here, but I guess this maybe that thing influenced me on the green color we're wearing, we're having on the garments. It's British race car green. So I think you maybe realize that the influences you get from a certain area can come from anywhere, come from music. It's not that easy. So I think for me, it's listening, being what you say in Swedish called allmänbildad. It's listening to everything that is going on in society. A few people are like, oh, I'm into running, that's all I do, and then you will get your influences. Or I love rock and roll and tattoos, and then I create a brand from that. But I think for me, it's like taking influences basically from everywhere, and I'm listening to people think that, oh, because you like track and field or running, you're just into that. But that's not the truth. I think I have a lot of different interests. So that's my advice, maybe, to be open for a lot of different things.
Yeah. And now you're in your growing phase. It's going really well. But looking to the future, what kind of legacy would you like to leave with your brand?
Well, I would love to show everyone that we can create a successful brand within sustainability, local production, and profitability. Because it's and that will be the legacy. I hope that we have done something that is something that I would be proud of, and hopefully other people would be proud of, that you can do something that has a different setup than a lot of other brands, what they have done. But it has to be not only sustainable, And with this kind of local production, it has to be profitable also to be that kind of role model, I think, because you're not going to build a sustainable business unless you're profitable also. So I think that is really important for me to show everyone that you can do this differently. So yeah, I think that's the dream scenario.
And that's also that, no, but that's really unique because you're not putting, of course, you need to be profitable to be in business. Without profit, no business. But it's not priority number one. It's running a business and making sure the business is sustainable in longevity from doing the right thing. I love that. I think it's really beautiful and very inspiring, and I hope it really inspires a lot of the listeners that we have today.
And the other day I was just going to mention one thing that it feels a little bit with the vision also was that I saw someone wearing our clothes coming from a running session, looking super stylish, sitting at a restaurant after the running session, and that was like, this is a dear diary moment. That's what I want to create, like clothes.
Did
that
you
look
go up
so
to them
good.
and say, "You look amazing," or did you not?
No, I didn't say anything. But if my kids are with me, they usually scream, "Hey, Dad! They're wearing your clothes!" But they were not around, so I didn't say anything. But that was a cool moment.
That's amazing. What is one question you wish we'd asked, but we haven't, that you'd like the listeners to take away from this conversation today?
No, I think we covered most topics. Actually, it could be no. I think we covered all of it. To be honest.
That's great. So then a very important question, and how can our listeners find you and your brand? Where should they go to find you?
YMRTrackClub.com.
We will add all the links in the show notes. So we will, and if you want to also share, if I don't know, if people want to connect with you on LinkedIn and stuff, they could. I'm sure
we will add
that.
everything to the show notes.
Yeah.
So this has been very, very inspiring and great talking with you today and learning so much about your journey with your brand.
And thanks for being also so transparent, because it's not always when you're not very many people want to exactly share how they do things, because also this industry is somewhat closed. Brands don't want to share with each other how they do things. And I love that you kind of like were really open with what you do and how you do it. Just very inspiring.
Yeah,
so that's
very authentic and transparent in all ways. And that, I mean, shows also just for your brand, you talk about transparency, but also how you share everything. So I think that will, the customers will see that, how transparent you are and open about your business and authentic and just with your background story and who you are. So I think it's a great, inspiring story and brand.
And we're looking forward to following your journey.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.